The ancient stone walls of Bananal seemed to breathe history, a heavy, silent breath that permeated the very air. Nestled deep within the Paraíba valley of São Paulo, this remote, isolated region was a testament to forgotten grandeur, a land where time had seemingly paused. Ruined imperial coffee plantations, their grand facades crumbling under the relentless embrace of the Atlantic forest, stood like skeletal monuments to a bygone era. Hills, thick with impenetrable greenery, coiled around the properties, isolating them further, creating pockets of a world untouched by modern clamor. A profound sense of decay hung over everything, a rich, somber aroma of lost fortunes and untold stories, lending the landscape a foreboding, almost melancholic tone. It was into this forgotten corner that the protagonist, a man weary of the city's ceaseless demands, had retreated. He sought solace, a quiet escape from the urban cacophony, and found it in an old, secluded property, a former overseer's house perched on a gentle slope overlooking a valley choked with dense foliage. For a time, a deceptive tranquility settled over him. The chirping of unseen birds, the rustle of leaves in the perpetual breeze, the vast star-dusted nights, all contributed to an initial sense of calm, a balm for his frayed nerves. He spent his days meticulously restoring the old house, each creak of the floorboards, each discovery of a forgotten architectural detail, a small victory against the encroaching silence. It was during one such renovation project, while prying loose a particularly stubborn section of wainscoting in the master bedroom, that he stumbled upon it. Behind the dry, rotting wood, nestled in a shallow, dust-choked cavity, lay a small, leather-bound diary. Its covers were brittle, the once supple leather now cracked and flaking, but its clasp, though tarnished, held firm. A thrill, a mix of curiosity and historical intrigue surged through him. He carefully opened the book, the pages rustling like ancient parchment, their edges yellowed and fragile. This was no mere trinket. This was a window into the past, a tangible piece of the region's enigmatic history. The diary's author, as revealed by the elegant looping script on the first page, was a man named Marcos, a former resident of this very property, dating back to the late 19th century. Initially, Marcos's entries were mundane, detailing the rhythms of plantation life, the coffee harvest, the capricious weather, the occasional visit from a neighboring landowner. But as the protagonist delved deeper, a subtle shift occurred. Marcos's tone grew increasingly anxious, peppered with fleeting mentions of strange occurrences. Whispers in empty hallways, fleeting shadows at the periphery of his vision, and most unsettling, the faint ethereal sound of a child's laughter, where no child should be. Marcos's growing fear, his creeping paranoia began to resonate with an unease that slowly started to bloom within the protagonist himself. The diary spoke of a girl with white eyes, a recurring unsettling presence that haunted Marcos's days and nights. Subtle disturbances began to manifest around the protagonist. The old house, which he had grown to love, now seemed to sigh and groan with a different kind of weight. Creaks from the attic, the faint rustle of curtains when no window was open, fleeting movements caught in his peripheral vision. All were easily dismissed initially. Old house sounds, he told himself, or perhaps the stress of the renovation, a trick of his imagination. Yet, the diary's narrative, Marcos's descent into terror, began to blur with his own reality. He found himself consumed by Marcos's story, unable to put the brittle book down, reading late into the night, the flickering lamplight casting long dancing shadows that seemed to mock his attempts at rational thought. Then came the first undeniable incident. A sharp, distinct slam echoed from the kitchen, though he was alone in the living room. He rushed in to find the heavy pantry door, which he had closed moments before, wide open, rattling slightly on its hinges. Later that week, a small, porcelain doll, clearly a child's toy, appeared on his bedside table. He had no children, no visitors, and certainly no dolls. His rationality, once a steadfast anchor, began to fray. Fear, cold and insidious, started to take a firm hold. He questioned his own sanity, the very line between reality and hallucination blurring with terrifying speed. Marcos's final diary entry, scrawled in a frantic, almost illegible hand, described a desperate cryptic ritual performed to contain the girl. The words ended abruptly, leaving the protagonist suspended in a chilling uncertainty, wondering if Marcos had succeeded or if the girl with white eyes had merely found a new inhabitant for her ancient silent game. The phenomena intensified, escalating in frequency and aggression, tearing at the protagonist's already fragile peace. Objects would shift positions when he turned his back, a teacup migrating from the counter to the sink, a book laid face down on his nightstand, now found open on the floor. Cold spots materialized suddenly, chilling the air in specific corners of rooms, raising goosebumps despite the otherwise comfortable temperature. Disembodied whispers, faint but undeniably present, seemed to coil around him just beyond the edge of decipherable language, their insidious presence a constant torment. His sleep, once a refuge, became a battleground. Nightmares, vivid and terrifying, plagued him, often featuring the girl with white eyes staring silently, accusingly. He would wake in a cold sweat, heart pounding, the exhaustion of sleepless nights compounding his already heightened anxiety. He tried hesitantly at first to confide in a few trusted friends and his distant family, hoping for understanding, for a rational explanation. Their responses were uniform, delivered with a mix of concern and thinly veiled dismissal. "You're stressed, you're isolated," they'd say. "It's the old house, playing tricks on your mind." Each well-meaning platitude felt like a fresh betrayal, not just from them, but from his own mind, which seemed to be conspiring against him. The house, once his retreat, now felt like a sentient entity, watching, waiting, its ancient walls breathing with a malevolent life. Despite the terror it evoked, an inexplicable, almost magnetic pull drew him back to the diary. It was a compulsion he couldn't resist, a dark addiction. He found himself poring over Marcos's frantic entries, tracing the delicate, desperate script, searching for answers, for any clue that might explain his torment. The parallels between Marcos's descriptions and his own escalating experiences became chillingly clear, creating a sense of predestination. It was as if he wasn't just reading a historical document, but a prophecy, a blueprint for his own inevitable descent. The image of the girl with white eyes, so vivid in Marcos's words, grew clearer, sharper in his own mind. Her silent gaze almost palpable, as if she were watching him read, leaning over his shoulder, a ghostly companion in his terror. His grip on reality, already tenuous, began to loosen further. He oscillated wildly between desperate attempts to rationalize the events, logical explanations for every creak, every shadow, and a terrifying acceptance of the supernatural. Then he would question his own sanity, wondering if the isolation, the stress, the ancient house itself had finally broken him. He started to isolate himself completely, fearing not only the ridicule of others should he speak of his experiences again, but also the entity itself. The house, once a sanctuary, transformed into a sprawling, inescapable prison. Moments of intense sensory discomfort became commonplace. A pervasive, cloying smell of decay would suddenly fill the air, only to vanish moments later. The oppressive silence of the old rooms would deepen, becoming a heavy, suffocating blanket, often punctuated by a sudden, inexplicable drop in temperature that left him shivering to his bones. Then came the direct, undeniable manifestation, shattering any remaining rational defenses. He was in the dusty library, the diary open before him, when a cold, skeletal finger traced a path down his spine. He froze, every nerve screaming, unable to move, unable to breathe. A whisper, cold and dry as old bone, hissed directly into his ear, a sound that twisted his gut with primal fear. "You read it. You own it." He whirled around, but there was nothing. Only the empty air, the faint scent of decay, and the chilling certainty that he was no longer alone. A fleeting glimpse, a shimmering, translucent form in the periphery of his vision, a small figure with long dark hair and eyes of blinding white. It was the girl, undeniably. This single, irrefutable incident confirmed the supernatural presence, transforming his terror into a grim, desperate determination to understand and somehow combat the entity that had claimed his house, and now, his very being. Driven by this new resolve, he returned to the diary, his fingers trembling as he turned the brittle pages. he found a hidden passage, a section Marcos had meticulously concealed beneath a pasted-over flap, detailing not a ritual of containment, but one of transference. Marcos, in his desperation, had not sought to banish the girl, but to bind her to the diary itself, passing the curse, the burden to the next unsuspecting soul who would dare to read her story. The revelation hit him like a physical blow. The girl with white eyes was not merely haunting the house, but the narrative, the very words themselves. The curse operated on a cyclical transference, a dark legacy passed from reader to reader. He was not just reading a story, he was now irrevocably part of it, the latest link in a chain forged in fear and desperation. The girl was no longer just Marcos's tormentor. She was his, a silent, spectral companion, a terrifying burden he had unwittingly inherited. The crushing weight of this revelation propelled him into a frenzied, desperate search for release. He tried to destroy the diary, tearing at its pages with trembling hands, but the leather-bound book seemed to resist him, its ancient binding impossibly strong. When he finally managed to rip a page, the words on it, Marcos's frantic scrawl, seemed to shimmer and reform, mocking his futile efforts. He threw it into the roaring fireplace, watching as the flames licked at its edges, only for the diary to mysteriously reappear on his bedside table, untouched, within the hour. The object was inexplicably resilient, a physical manifestation of the curse it carried. He sought answers beyond the confines of the crumbling plantation, venturing into the small, dusty towns scattered across the Paraíba valley. He spoke to local historians, their eyes glazing over with disinterest at his wild tales, and to elderly women rumored to possess ancient knowledge, who offered only cryptic warnings about things best left buried and stories that demand to be told. No one offered a solution, only an affirmation of the region's deep-seated superstitions and a profound sense of helplessness. The entity, now fully aware of his attempts to break free, intensified its manifestations. Whispers became screams, shadows solidified into fleeting, menacing figures in his peripheral vision, and the cold spots became constant, clinging to him like a shroud. The torment was no longer random, it was personal, targeting his deepest fears, his growing isolation, and his dwindling sanity. Convinced that the curse was inextricably tied to the accursed house, he made a desperate, impulsive decision. He would abandon Bananal, leave the decaying plantation, and seek refuge in the anonymity of the city. Taubaté, a bustling urban center, seemed a world away from the oppressive silence and haunted history of the valley. The move was swift, almost frantic. For a brief, fleeting period, a false sense of security enveloped him. The cacophony of city life, the endless stream of strangers, the bright, indifferent lights. They offered a temporary balm, a distraction from the chilling reality he carried within him. He clung to the hope that the sheer volume of human presence would somehow dilute the entity's power, that the curse was a geographically bound affliction. But the inescapable truth soon began to unravel his fragile peace. The disturbances, subtle at first, then undeniably overt, followed him to Taubaté. A sudden, inexplicable chill in his modern apartment, the faint scent of decay amidst the city's exhaust fumes, the fleeting glimpse of a small, pale hand disappearing around a corner in a crowded supermarket. The girl with white eyes was not bound by stone or soil. She was bound to him, the carrier of the narrative. Her presence became undeniable. She appeared in his new home, a spectral flicker in the corner of his eye, and even in crowded places her white eyes piercing through the throngs, a silent, terrifying accusation. The psychological horror deepened as he realized there was no escape, no sanctuary from the story he had unearthed. The climax arrived on a rainy Tuesday evening as he sat alone in his apartment. The diary once again open on his lap, its pages now worn smooth from his incessant, tormented readings. He felt a profound weariness, a soul-crushing despair that transcended mere fatigue. He looked up, and there she was, standing silently in the center of his living room, no longer a fleeting glimpse but a stark, undeniable presence. The girl with white eyes stood before him, her long, dark hair framing a face of ethereal paleness, her eyes those terrifying luminous white orbs fixed upon him. She did not move, did not speak, did not physically harm him. Her presence alone, her unwavering gaze, was a profound and soul-crushing terror, a silent acknowledgement of his fate. In that moment he understood his destiny was sealed. He was merely the current vessel for the entity's story, a living chapter in a narrative that refused to die. Broken, resigned, and utterly consumed by the burden, he began to write. He found another leather-bound journal, a blank canvas for his own descent into the abyss. He documented his experiences, his terror, his slow surrender, compelled by an unseen force, mirroring Marcos's actions, ensuring the continuation of the narrative. His final entry was chillingly calm, a testament to his acceptance. He described the girl with white eyes as if she were a constant companion, an accepted part of his reality, no longer a tormentor, but an eternal shadow. He then placed the completed diary in a hidden compartment he had built into his new apartment, alongside a brand new, pristine blank notebook. The cycle was not broken, merely transferred. The chilling implication hung in the air, a spectral whisper. The reader of his story was now the next link in the chain, the next victim of the buried diary.